great job this morning. I get to do introductions occasionally to different people, but today I get to introduce to you my dad, Ron Ball. He's going to be your kickoff speaker. So a few stats real quick. My dad has spoken live to over 8 million people all over the world in every inhabited continent. He's written 16 books that have sold over 2 million copies. He has a TV show right now called Choose Greatness, and he's got a supporting book also called Choose Greatness, which I think is here today. And I want to tell you something personal, because that's why you really want someone who knows a person like this before they get up. You've heard all this week about creative disruption, and my dad is a master of creative disruption. I know this because at 9 years old, Mom and Dad gave me an allowance of $5 a week, and my life was cushy and good, and I felt like things were going the way I wanted it to. And then my mom and dad decided that I was becoming entitled. They came to me and they said, "Allison, we're going to stop giving you an allowance because you are becoming a socialist." That's what they said to me. So they cut off my allowance. I was very upset. They were right. I had become a socialist in my mind. And eventually, I had to figure out how to make money, and I started my own business. I started Positive Pencils International. I sold positive pencils for 25 cents each or 4 for $1. And my first week selling pencils... Yeah, let it sink in. My first week selling pencils, I made $200. And I tell people that experience did exactly what you want with a creative disruption. It turned me into a conservative because all of a sudden I understood free enterprise, free market, what happens when you work hard. So my dad did exactly what I'm sure he was trying to do with his creative disruption. So with that, please welcome my dad, Ron Ball.
Thank you. Good morning, good morning. I am so appreciative of this opportunity, and I was surprised last night when they told me that my daughter Allison would make the introduction. So thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Allison. My son-in-law Asa Swan is here, and he's also done an extraordinarily good job presenting leadership principles, and some of you have already heard him. Well, I had an unusual, unexpected experience at 5:30 this morning. I'm a dedicated, determined runner. I've been running for 25 years. And so I was out at 5:30 this morning running on the hot, sweaty streets of Austin. And as I turned a corner about 2 blocks from here, I remember I was making good time. I felt good, and I was into my run. And I suddenly had something completely unexpected. And it was not a mugging, so no danger. But what happened was a spiritual moment. Because I had been praying while I was running, and I suddenly had a sense of something that completely surprised me. I had a tremendous sense, and I rarely start with this kind of an opening, but I had a tremendous sense that there was somebody who would be in this audience this morning, and you, whoever you are supposed to do something extraordinary. I felt that. It was so powerful. I knew, and maybe it's more than one person, maybe it's a number of you, but somebody is in this audience, and I am absolutely certain that this is your moment, and this is your day, and something is going to happen in you that will trigger a response, that will cause a result, that will make an impact and make a difference. I don't know who you are, but I am so happy you're here. Now, with that unusual introduction, let me tell you a personal story. When I was 10 years old, my daughter told you what happened to her at 9. When I was 10 years old, my dad informed our family that we were going to move to Huntington, West Virginia. Now, we grew up in a small mountain community in eastern Kentucky, middle of the coal mines, and this was a radical move for me. And we were moving in the middle of the school year, and I was nervous and a little excited, but a little scared. It was my mom, my dad, my dog, and me, and after Christmas, we all moved to Huntington for my dad's new job. And I went to our new school and was very excited because it was the first day, middle of the school year, didn't know anybody. I'd grown up in a very secure environment in eastern Kentucky, surrounded by family and cousins and friends and people who knew my family. My family has lived in the same town for 10 10 generations. So deep roots, and suddenly those roots were gone, and I was in a radically new environment. I remember vividly walking into that class, 10 years old. I was only a child, and I walked into the class, and the teacher met me at the door, and the teacher said, well, would you, when the class convenes, would you stand up, tell your name, introduce yourself, and say something to the students you'll be meeting? And I agreed to do that. So I sat there very nervous, ready for this moment, and all the other students came in, 10 years of age, all of us children, and the teacher walked up, said a few introductory words, motioned for me. I got up, walked over, stood in front of the class, and gave my name and told everybody how happy I was to be there and that I was eager to make new friends. And I noticed that nobody was listening to me. It was total silence. And everybody was focused on the teacher at her desk, who was sitting laughing convulsively. She laughed so hard that it was embarrassing. Nobody knew what to do. And after she regained her composure, totally true story, after she regained her composure, she walked over to me. Now, here I am, totally new child, very nervous, didn't know what to expect, had always been loved by my family. And she walked over to me, put her hand on my shoulder, and said, class, I just wanted you to hear what a dumb, stupid, hick kid from Kentucky sounds like. And then she started to laugh again. And I stood there burning with embarrassment. Now, you have children. You were a child. Can you just for a moment imagine the humiliation of that for a child? Can you imagine my feelings at that moment? I was crushed. And I went back to my seat, everybody laughing, twittering all around me. And something snapped inside of me. 10 years of age, something happened. And I felt a fire begin to burn in my heart. I felt something begin to erupt inside of me. And suddenly I had a determination that I would become the greatest student in that school. And I made a decision at 10 years of age that I would excel at everything. At that moment, I transferred from a victim to someone who would fight for my own success. And the rest of that school year, I did exactly that. I made every sports team, even though I was a little bit of a klutz. I still made the teams. I made every opportunity work. I was at the head of every class, and I did it because of the embarrassment of that moment. Now, that was a trigger for me. Something happened that erupted, that transformed my direction in life. I've never gotten over it. Now, some people think that that by itself is a story that defines greatness, but it does not. That is only the opportunity for greatness. The fire, the burn, the blaze, the ambition, the determination, all of that is only the beginning of the opportunity for you to actually be a great man or a great woman, but that does not constitute greatness at all. It's only the opportunity for it. I read a fascinating study a while back, ancient Greek teaching on greatness. Now, they had no concept of what we call our celebrity culture. They would not have understood somebody being famous just for being famous. According to ancient Greek thought, if you were great, it's because you sacrificed to do something great for other people. You were not great because you were good looking. You were not great because you were exceptional in your abilities or your education. You were great because you did something great to do something good in your culture, in your society, for other people. So even though I had a beginning of a new desire to do something great at 10 years of age, that wasn't greatness, not yet. And I'm not claiming I'm there yet. But I want to take that as a jumping off point and explain the three primary qualities that lead you to greatness. I'm going to be very specific, very quick, very concise, and very targeted. So I want you to listen as fast as I'm going to present it. And we'll do this together, all right? What does it mean to really be a great man or a great woman? I mean, all of you have already accomplished so much. All of you have already done something in your own particular arena that sets you apart. You've already done something special, but are you great? And have you done something great yet? Well, here's how you can measure your greatness. Number one, you need real humility. You need real humility. At some point, you have to come to the conclusion that whatever you do, it is not about you. It is about the goodness you can create through your efforts, through your commitment, through your determination, but it's not about you personally. Now, that is really hard. It's tough. I was sitting up one morning at 4 a.m. with a remarkable man who mentored me. I just conducted his funeral about 6 months ago. He had the largest Amway business in the whole world. Last year, his downline business grossed $7 billion. One man from Rome, New York, with only a high school education. And this remarkable individual, Dexter Yeager, mentored me for years. And I was in his lake home in South Carolina, listening to him teach me important principles at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I remember he said something that just burned into me. He said there is a difference between a big ego and a strong ego. He said you need a strong ego to withstand adversity. You need a strong ego to get the job done. You need a strong ego to develop confidence. But he said a big ego is a cancer, it is a toxin, it is a poison, it is a danger. A big ego is when you are the one who has to be on top, and your ultimate true purpose for doing what you do is to elevate yourself. And he said that will never be sustainable. You will never be great if it's about you. I never forgot that. I spent almost a year, great privilege, on the speaking circuit with Ronald Reagan. Reagan and I would go to different events. We spoke to a huge crowd, and I remember at the Georgia Dome, 72,000 people. And then I did another one with Reagan in Greensboro, North Carolina. Did another one in Houston, Texas. And for several months, we traveled together, and Reagan was a revelation. He was an unbelievable gentleman. And I remember the first time I saw him walking down a hallway, there were 3 of us waiting for him. It was the first time I'd ever met him. The Secret Service was asked to leave, and Reagan walked into a room with us. And there was a bowl of chocolate chip cookies. He loved them. So he's standing there munching on cookies, and he starts to talk to all of us, and suddenly we were the most important people in the room, not Reagan. He made us feel that way. Here was the most powerful man in the world, and he made us feel special. He made us feel like we were important. And it was like that every time I was with him. Every experience with Reagan, he made us feel great. He had humility. He had confidence. I mean, that was obvious. But he also had a humble heart. It was phenomenal. It made a tremendous impact on me. I want to tell you one more thing about humility. And I've never told this publicly before, so you're going to be the first group to ever hear this. And I've spoken, as my daughter said, to a lot of people all over the world. I've never told this publicly. But when I was a young student pastor going into college, Southern Baptist student pastor, I worked with another young man from my high school, and he was the football hero of our school. Wide receiver, gifted, and he and I had both become Christians around the same time, and we were both co-pastoring this little church under the supervision of another pastor. We were seniors in high school. And he went to do what we in Baptist circles call a youth revival. And Larry came back, and I've never told this before, but Larry came back, and I said, "Hey, Larry, how was it?" He said, "Ron, unbelievable. You wouldn't believe it. Amazing. Incredible. We had kids making commitments to Christ, people coming forward." He said, "I've never seen anything like it." And I remember looking at my friend Larry, giving him a big smile and saying, "Oh, wow, Larry, that's great." And inside my heart, I was consumed with jealousy. I felt sick because those people had responded when he spoke and not me. And I remember going and leaving his home that day. I've never told this before. And I walked into a church, a local church, and I was so sick in my heart. I walked in and I was so ashamed of myself. And I just said, "God, you have to help me. You have to help me. If I am jealous because you bless somebody else, what in the world is wrong with me?" And that was a turning point for me spiritually. What I'm saying is true greatness, one of the components is real humility. Now there's a second component. The second component is honest sacrifice. Let me tell you about Francis. Francis came to the United States when he was 5 years old. His family immigrated from Sicily. They moved to California. And young Francis grew up in the early California movie culture in the 1920s. When he was a young man, he went to school at the California Institute of Technology, and he studied chemistry. And so when he graduated, because he knew chemistry, one of the movie studio heads latched on to him and said, you need to work for me because we don't understand celluloid and tape and film, and we need help. So young Francis became a part of the movie industry, kind of in the back door. And he was good at it. And his bosses liked him, and they let him direct a movie. In 1935, young Francis swept the Academy Awards with a movie called It Happened One Night, starring Clark Gable. Now, Francis, who was known as Frank Capra by this point, became an extraordinarily successful director. He won 3 Academy Awards for Best Director before 1939. And in 1939, he released a movie that he believed would be a testament to his gratitude to the United States of America. He called the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Now, it didn't win the Oscar that year because that was the golden year of American movies. That was the year of Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz and John Wayne's introduction in Stagecoach. But the movie still made an impact. Franklin Roosevelt loved the movie and had it screened at the White House numerous times. But what most people don't know is that the head of the studio did not want to release that movie because he thought it might offend people because it was too American, even in 1939. And he didn't want to rock that particular boat. And he also wanted to release the movie in Europe, and he thought it might offend people in Europe being so pro-American. And Capra persisted in his determination to release that movie. And here's where the story gets amazing. The Nazis had just invaded and taken over France. France capitulated. You know the story, you know the history. And just before the doors were culturally closed in France, there was a national poll taken. What American movies would you like before we can't get them anymore? And over 90% of those voting picked Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Well, the movie became so popular during the Nazi domination that one theater owner who was concerned about what was happening to the Jews, one theater owner decided to defy the Nazis and risk his life and show Mr. Smith Goes to Washington every night for 30 nights. And the theater was packed every night. And when the Nazis realized what was going on, they shut him down, and then the movie was bootlegged to the resistance fighters, and they showed that movie once a week in their resistance enclaves for the rest of the war. That movie empowered a generation of freedom fighters. But it was a movie that Frank Capra was told not to release, or it will threaten your career. Honest sacrifice. He was willing to sacrifice his career to make a movie about America because he loved America. That theater owner was willing to risk his life against Nazi tyranny because he believed in the message of that movie. This is honest sacrifice. That's what the Greeks were all over. You have real humility and you have honest sacrifice. And number 3, if you're going to really do something great in your life, you start with a humble heart. And then you move into honest sacrifice for a greater cause than you. But then, number 3, you need true grit. You need some strength. You need some guts. You need some determination. You need some toughness. One more quick story and I'll wrap this up. Young Will grew up in western Pennsylvania. He was pudgy, overweight, and lost an eye in a childhood accident. So he wasn't very impressive to look at. But he got interested in music. His dad was a mechanic and his mom was a piano teacher. And when he was 12 years old, his dad gave him a guitar for his birthday. And he fell in love with country western music. Here he is in Pennsylvania, but he loved the country songs from Tennessee and Arkansas and Kentucky and Alabama. He just loved those songs. So he started a group called the Saddle Men. And they toured all over that part of Pennsylvania. And then in 1952, he wrote a song called Crazy Man Crazy. And it reached the top 40 on the Billboard popularity list. And so he was signed by Decca Records. And he said in 1953, I've written a new song, and he played it for the Decca executives, and nobody liked it. And they said, forget your song. He said, but I want to do my song. And then the executive said, okay, you can do your song if you do a song for us first. It's called 13 Women and One Man in Town. It's a weird song. You can Google it. About a hydrogen bomb attack on America. There's one town left, and there's 13 women still alive and one man. It's a weird song. Listen to it. And so the conclusion was, you do this song, and you can do your song. So he agreed. And on April the 12th, 1954, he went to a Masonic temple that had been converted into a sound studio in New York City. Now, they could not get there on time, and so they were 3 hours late to get there. And so he pulls in, they've only got so much time, and he has to record the 13 Women Weird song first. And so they make him work all afternoon on that song till his voice is scratchy and hoarse, and he just cannot function until finally he's able to record his song, and he records it. And then they release the record, and as predicted, it's a flop because nobody liked 13 Women and One Man in Town. And nobody listened to the other side until his song was accidentally almost selected to be on the end credits of a movie called The Asphalt Jungle in 1955. And the record executives realized that something explosive was happening. People were standing up and dancing in the aisles because the song that nobody liked had a great catchy refrain that went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock rock. It was rock around the clock. And it became the second most successful song in history other than White Christmas. But why was the song even released? You know why? Because young Will, or as he became known, Bill Haley, and his group, the Saddlemen, which was transferred to the Comets, because he had true grit. Because he dug in, grabbed it by the throat, and wouldn't let go. It's a great story. So I want to say 3 things to finish. Real humility. Real humility. It's not about you. A humble heart like Reagan, like I saw in him. A humble heart. Honest sacrifice like Frank Capra and that theater owner in France defying the Nazis. Honest sacrifice for something better than you. And true grit where you sink your teeth in and you will not let go. Now, my time is up. In fact, they're even telling me my time is up. Well done. But remember what I started with? I felt unexpectedly this morning that somebody here, God wants to do something unusual through you. I don't know who you are. God wants to do something special through you, something great through you. But you need humility. And you need a spirit of sacrifice. And you need true grit. So whoever you are, if you'll commit to those things, you can do something great for the cause you believe in. Now, my daughter mentioned my book, Choose Greatness. We've sold 200,000 copies. It's been going, we have an inner city school in Louisville, Kentucky right now using this little simple book, Choose Greatness. And they told me, I got a message just recently, kids are going up and down the hallway chanting, Choose Greatness, Choose Greatness. That's at an inner city school. So I was asked to bring the book here this morning. I don't have enough for everybody, but it will be available outside in the hallway, outside this room. So take the message of greatness. Take this simple message. Take this simple cause, and you be great, and you do something great, and you do it for the glory of God, and everybody will be happy you lived. Thank you.